3. We operate under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Chapter 26 of the Town of Danvers General Bylaws, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. After each applicant presents his or her request and the board has had time to ask questions and discuss the project, we'll accept questions from the audience. Because this is a public meeting, it is required by law that you give your name and address before you speak. Although we may disagree with the issues raised, all persons present during this meeting are expected to be civil to all of the meeting attendees. This includes the members of the commission, the staff, abutters, concerned citizens, property owners, and project applicants. We also request that you confine your questions to the project and only as it pertains to the Wetlands Acts. We cannot handle, nor do we have jurisdiction regarding such things as noise or traffic. All problems not related to the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Danvers Wetlands Protection Bylaw must be taken up with other appropriate boards. First off, we'll have a roll call. Peter Wilson is present. Vanessa Curran.
Present.
Jonathan Garies.
I believe he's actually starting the next meeting, so
Okay.
he's not present.
Mary Haight.
Present.
Ann McGill.
She's absent.
Absent.
And Michael Swain.
Yeah.
Just a quick welcome to Mary Haight, and I guess the next meeting now will be Jonathan.
All right, Mary.
Thank you for your volunteering and your service, and we all appreciate it. Now Mary is in the role of an alternate.
Correct.
So in that role, she can ask questions and offer comments, but when it comes to voting, she has to abstain.
Correct.
Unless we are below a quorum, and then
Correct.
she would qualify as a voting.
She could constitute a quorum,
Yes.
correct?
Right.
Yep.
Okay, the first order of business is a request for certificate of compliance for 13 Toomey Street. The DEP file number was 14-520. The applicant was Richard Gilmore. Is anyone here to represent that?
Yes, we have Richard Gilmore. He's actually here virtually, and I think your mic is off, so take it away if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Georgia.
Ooh,
Hi, Commission. Attorney Rick Gilmore for the owners of 13 Toomey Street. We had here an older outstanding order of conditions. I believe it originated in 1993. Somewhat of a housekeeping matter. We're looking to just get a closeout of that order.
Okay, and just let me turn and ask Georgia, and you've inspected the property?
yeah, so I did a site visit last week, and the house, the pool, and the deck that were approved under the original order were built in compliance. The memo does note, I noticed some various items in the buffer zone that I asked the owner to remove, which he did that day and then sent me photos. So the site is stable as it should be, and I actually had an opportunity to talk to the new owners and inform them of the requirements for any future alterations, so they are well aware of that.
Okay, so whatever the materials are that were within the 50-foot buffer have been removed?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any further questions.
No
Mike, you?
questions, no?
Vanessa?
I just have one. So
Yeah.
I noted in the memo you put that the reason that they had the tarps down was because there's Japanese knotweed coming towards their yard, so it's just nothing can be done about that.
Well, I think it's a matter of, so if you look at the memo photo, there's a black vinyl fence that runs down the whole entire property line and separates the maintained lawn from the wetland area.
Okay.
So in my mind, them trying to stop the invasives on the left side, maybe try to manage it on the lawn side, but not on the wetland, the natural vegetative side,
Okay.
if that makes sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is there any way they could use something besides the tarp? Would there be something like a mulch or hay or grass?
So I think further to kind of Vanessa's point, they could do those ulterior measures on the lawn side. I think the issue here was they were kind of encroaching into vegetative area they didn't need to.
Yep.
It didn't really serve a purpose. He was trying to stop it from spreading on the lawn over the fence, so if
Okay.
it were to do that, I would say if he wanted to add hay or mulch or,
Yep.
but that's more for the new owner, once they acquire the property, so. He has my contact and we've been in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, was that it, Ann? Yes? Okay. Any, it's not a public hearing, right? Is it-
No.
I don't know if there's any public comment, but we don't need. Okay, if someone can offer a motion to extend a certificate of
I'll
compliance?
move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 13 Toomey Street, DEP file number 14-520, applicant Richard Gilmore.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Next up is a request for a certificate of compliance for 27 Garfield Avenue, also known as Lot 39 of Hilltop Estates, DEP file number 14-728. And once again, the applicant is Mr. Richard Gilmore. And if you could give us kind of an explanation of how this piece of property fits in with the whole development on the top of the hill, please.
Mr. Wilson, you're asking me that, or Georgia? I'm sorry, I
I'm
can't
sorry,
see.
I'm asking you, sir.
Yeah. I'm not, this is, again, this is very similar to the last situation where it's a very old original order condition from 1998. I believe it was amended in 2003. My understanding is that the main purpose of this one was for drainage. I don't know exactly where, our lot is lot 39 in that subdivision. I'm not sure exactly where that fits. If that's what you're asking.
I can-
Georgia, can you have anything
Yeah.
else to add to that?
I can briefly show you if you want to see. It's hard because it's white. We'll do it this way. So up here on the top, this cul-de-sac up top, that's Folly Hill. So that's elevated much, much higher than this red dot. So Garfield Ave is adjacent to Bradley and Ardmore, so it's really at the base of Folly Hill, essentially, if you've ever been in that area. And the wetlands are elevated much higher than 27 Garfield, which has the red dot, but they're in this general area right here. So all these houses, as well as these houses at the end of the cul-de-sac on Garfield and Bradley, were part of the overall subdivision. So that's where the 40 lots come in, but 27 Garfield, along with about 15 other house lots, were not in any wetland jurisdiction. It's just that either the tip of the roadway or other adjacent houses were.
Yeah. So what do we do differently now? Because we don't do this the same way now, right?
So what I would suggest is that the commission issue a partial certificate of compliance in which just lot 39, 27 Garfield would be released from the order
Yeah.
and then recorded appropriately, but that way it still holds the rest of the homes.
I mean, going forward, today, is it still done this way?
Yeah.
It is?
Oh, no, oh, you mean, no.
No.
If we had a subdivision now, it's only gonna be the roadway and any lot that also has wetland jurisdiction.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
That's a lot by lot.
that's a lot
You
better.
started, Mike, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess you heard, we don't want to issue a partial certificate of compliance. Someone can make a motion with that verbiage?
I'll move that we issue a partial certificate of compliance just for 27 Garfield Avenue, also known as Lot 39 of Hilltop Estates, DEP file number 14-728.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you all, and thank you, Georgia.
You're welcome.
you're welcome. Next up is a minor modification request for 12 Colin Tony Drive, lot number 6, DEP file number 14-1332. The applicant is the Moore and Cameron Group.
Good evening, John Colantoni, representing Beaverbrook Woods LLC on 12 Colantoni Drive, Lot 6. It's nice to be back to see everyone. I appreciate having us. And just want to thank Georgia for the last few weeks. She's been a tremendous help through the process and, our last couple lots at the subdivision. But we're basically here for an informal review of the plan of Lot 6, 12 Colantoni Drive, which was one of the conditions of the original OOC set by the commission. when we had the subdivision approved. So at this time, I'd just like to turn it over to Jared from Moran and Cameron in case there's any questions.
Hi, Jared Bastos from the Warren Camera Group at 66 Elm Street in Danvers. I'll just briefly walk you through the plan and some of the changes. So you'll see in red, this is our original approved plan. You'll have the dwelling, the patio, the deck, and we had a retaining wall. We've just made some changes to accommodate the buyers of the lot and what they would look like, their home to look like, and what they want to do. So you'll see the dwelling has changed in shape. We've just kind of adjusted and kind of brought this back over through this patio and deck area, and then kind of just changed it around
So
here.
the footprint of the dwelling that you're proposing now is the wider grayish line.
Yes, the black. The black work is all proposed. The red work was what was approved. So you'll see, so the footprint of the dwelling has been updated. The patio and deck have also been moved. The deck we've removed all the way from the riverfront buffer, and the patio we've moved from over here to over here, just to accommodate a pool and just some additional space for the patio. And then we've also changed the retaining wall. So we actually had a driveway that came through here, and that necessitated the need for a retaining wall. However, we have eliminated that. And what we've done is brought the wall all the way along here so that this can all kind of remain at natural grade, and we'll have no sort of grading work that will be necessary there. And we have not changed the limit of work. That has not changed. And then we've just provided a little table showing the riverfront alteration. So 183 square feet of alteration was approved. And that's alteration by building, paved patio and deck, and the retaining wall. And our proposed design has reduced that by 78 square feet to 105 square feet. And that is all I have. I can answer any questions.
So the driveway right in front, that's a new location.
Yes, the driveway has changed.
Okay, no, it looks good. Mike, let me have you
Just
start.
where was the driveway previously?
The driveway came through here.
I have the plan, Jared, if you want me to.
Yeah, you can show that. Yeah, you'll see the driveway. Yeah, this was the original driveway, and we had some
And
grade.
then why the change?
Just to accommodate the what the house buyers wanted, and kind of what their design was for the house, and what they wanted their home to look like.
That's all. No further questions.
Okay, good, thanks. Vanessa?
No questions.
Ann, do you have any questions? Actually, do come into this well
Mary.
after the fact.
Mary.
I'm sorry.
I'm good. Thank you.
It's been a long day. Overall, I'd say, we're pleased that you actually have less
Yeah.
square footage in the riverfront area. If you have a happy buyer, I guess everybody's happy. So, this is more or less to satisfy a condition of the original order of conditions, is that,
That's
so
correct.
we're gonna vote to,
Approve a minor modification.
Yeah.
no, not even, just to approve as presented.
Exactly. The most important thing is that you just reference this plan date and that the commission's accepting this plan dated July 6, 2023. So you could make a motion to approve.
What exactly are we voting on?
It could be a minor modification. That's usually something that's approved via staff and that it never goes in front of the commission. So this verbiage, we could say minor modification, but really it's just now accepting this as the plan associated with the order of conditions.
In my, just a little background, when the order of conditions was first approved, one of the conditions was that they had to come back to us
Right.
to approve the plan before they could go for a building permit. That's
So
where
we're
at
just
right now.
moving to approve the plan at this point,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
So now you can make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the plan presented today for 12 Colatoni Drive, Lot 6, DEP file number 14-1332, applicant Moran Cameron Group.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
good luck. Next up is a notice of intent for 152 Endicott Street, DEP file number 14-1402. The The applicant is Pete Doucette. Is this Mr. Doucette online?
I believe Robert is here to represent 152, and he's here virtually.
That's correct. Bob Clark from Allen and Major Associates. I'm also here with Greg Michaelides, who's the owner's rep. Pete was not able to attend this evening, but I've been corresponding with Ms. Pendergast, and thank you for putting us on. What we would like to do is open the public hearing and set up the site walk and square away the peer review, and then I believe we're going to table it to July 27th.
Good, you have it all covered.
I know you guys had a full agenda, and there was some question whether we would get on, and we were 9th on the agenda at first, so there's not really that much to present before we actually go out and do the site walk. We did file an ANRAD. We do have an ANRAD on the wetlands. We did flag a few more wetlands, and we'll do a full presentation at the next hearing, so don't want to take up much of your time. Mary Reamer Associates did the peer review on the ANRAD previously, so if you want to stay consistent, we have no objection with her doing the peer review on the notice of intent.
Okay, can we just get a little background on that? From what I understand, I'm sorry, Mike.
We went out there,
We did when they were doing the ANRAD, but I think,
and the peer review, right?
Yep.
right,
Yeah.
but I think their,
Yeah.
part of their proposal is that they want to fill some wetlands and also have a mitigating area.
Yes, yep.
So what we're thinking is that we want to have all that plan peer review.
Yeah.
You know, getting out there to see it, I don't know, is it worth it to get us, for us to get out there again?
So I think what we've also done in our past experience is that when if the commission agrees or approves that a peer review consultant should be hired to review the project, then we would join that consultant on their site walk. Like, that's similar to what we had done for Water Street, peer reviewing that ANRAD, and we also did a site visit with Mary. So tonight, it's more of, if the commission is leaning that way to vote for a peer review, staff would work to hire and find a consultant, and then we could schedule a site visit once they've done their review.
Does that sound fair to the applicant? Is that an apt plan? I have a question. 1 second, man.
Yes.
Okay. I won't forget you. Don't.
So they're already agreeing that we could use Mary for a peer review, correct?
Yeah, and that would be if Mary's willing, so
Yeah.
I usually ask 3. Some people say, yeah, I want to do it, but I'm fully booked until the end of Christmas, or, something. And then, or it also depends on cost. If someone came back really, really high and that was too much for the development team, we could ask other people. But I did suggest and feel this was warranted because we rarely get wetland filling projects, and not that they are treated any differently under the Act. I mean, they have more requirements, but I think the amount of work and the mitigation that is being provided is something that should be reviewed to see if it's sufficient. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, without going into a full presentation, we were originally coming straight off of Endicott. Mass DOT basically stated that would not be permitted, and so this is an old paper street, if you will, Chalet Court. It was something that was set up, so the only access that we could possibly come into this site is through Chalet Court, and that is what the filling will be. It's below 5,000 square feet, and we are replicating. So we're accessing a dry piece of land, cutting off just the nose of a finger projection of a wetland to access our site. So that's the only filling that we're actually doing.
Again,
And
all
we
these plans
spent-
are on
yeah.
file already, right? So-
Yes,
So
yep.
everyone's looking, so
yeah.
our next step in the interest of brevity is we want to get a peer review to make sure their plans are sound.
Exactly, yeah.
And then after that, we would have to issue a waiver, I'm sure.
Yes, yep.
Okay. And this is the only encroachment outside of actually inside of our jurisdiction based on the INRAD that was approved?
Well, there's other temporary alteration in bordering land subject to flooding, and then the overall riverfront area. But again, why I think a peer review is warranted is that the Wetland Protection Act requirements and performance standards for previously developed riverfront area, bordering land subject to flooding, wetland filling, they have their own standards and places. But the wetland filling is the only permanent real alteration.
Okay, so you're ready to proceed with that?
Yeah, if the commission is, that's not mine.
Okay, before we get to voting, ma'am, you had a comment?
Yes, I do.
Could you just go to the podium and tell us who you are and?
My name is Mary Murphy. I live on 10 Tammy Lane in Peabody. I was invited here as an abutter. My only question is, when they are working on the wetlands and the hotel, actually, what is going to be done for rodent and other wildlife mitigation, so it's not coming out of those wetlands into our area?
Well, I'd say when they demolish the hotel, no matter what, when there is substantial building, they need to check in with the Board of Health. There's an entire demolition process for abatement, and then
Correct.
pest control is required.
Correct.
And then after that, I mean, really, animals in the wetlands are going to stay in the I believe Peabody's across the
Yes.
river.
Yep.
Yeah. So for rodent control, that's going to be managed on-site by Board of Health and requirements by the developer.
Right, that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
What will they be doing? Are they going to use bait boxes,
Oh,
or?
I would call the Danvers Board of Health.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because the Board of Health Director is the one that requires that a rat abatement be done before complete demolition. So they can give
Awesome.
you all the details.
Okay, oh, jeez. They would know that for,
Yes.
both the wetlands and
Well,
the,
so the wetlands were not, I think if there is a pest issue, it's going to be inside the buildings, not inside the wetlands. Or if there are pests in the wetlands, that's their home. Yeah, and that's where they live. So
when they built the highway.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
But, so the Board of Health would definitely abate that issue. So I would start with Danvers Board of Health.
For both.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
I just
any
have
other-
one quick question.
Just one second.
Sorry.
Any other questions from the audience? No? All right, Vanessa, go ahead.
Are we looking to continue to the next July meeting or the first August meeting?
I'll leave that up to Bob, but I would say continuing to July 27th is, why not ask for that if in the chance the peer review consultants picked in the next 2 weeks, they're able to do their review, and then fall back for the first August meeting, if that.
And what meeting will they present what they're doing?
So right now, if the commission wants to continue them to July 27th, they possibly would be, I think no matter what, if you wanted to open and discuss, it sounds like that's what they would want to do.
Yeah, at some point, we have to see
Yeah.
the details.
So I think July 27th is what they had requested.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
We knew you had a full agenda tonight, so there was some concern that we weren't going to be able to present because we were 9th on the agenda. So
Yeah.
I requested that we open the public hearing and set up the peer review so we can get those items in motion. And if the board wanted to have a site walk, we could do a site walk. But if it's better to do a site walk after the peer reviewer did their thing, that's great. But I didn't want to lose a month, so I requested that we at least open it, get the peer review process going, and then we could come back and do a full presentation on the 27th of July.
Right, and we'll do what we can to help you moving along.
Great.
Okay, so if someone,
Can I just ask one more question?
sure, go ahead.
Can you go to the podium, please? Thank you.
We're very strict about the podium.
Well, you're on live TV, so people want to hear you at
Oh,
home.
I'm sorry. Another question. The next meeting is for the actual building is supposed to be July 25th. Is that still happening?
So July 27th, we'll be
20
back in this room, and they will be giving a full presentation of what they're proposing, what the building will look like, what the uses are,
Okay.
how the wetlands will be affected. That will be on July 27th.
Do they have other meetings going on, planning?
They will have to go in front of planning board. Is that July 25th? Yes, sorry,
Yes.
ma'am. That's what
Yes,
you're
correct.
talking about.
That is the 25th, and
Yeah.
that's still planning to go as scheduled, correct?
Yes.
All right. Would we be notified, like you had mentioned, that you didn't think that you were going to get on the agenda? So we would have come here for nothing, basically. Would we be notified if you weren't going to be on the agenda, or?
No, you should check the town, Danvers website. We'll have the agenda posted
Okay.
on the Friday before the meeting. So
Oh, all right.
they are planned to be there, but if for some reason everyone got sick, that
Yeah.
agenda is going to say canceled, continued to the next meeting.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I just,
Mike, another question?
just actually through staff, since we've now opened the public hearing for this
Correct.
matter, would you just talk about the time ramification now?
If we weren't, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, in terms of when they present, when we have to make a vote.
What we do, the commission has to make a vote within 21 days
Yeah.
unless the applicant agrees to
Yeah,
extend.
So that's for Mary's
Got it.
benefit.
I like that. Yeah. And in this case, the applicant is more than willing to accommodate to the next hearing.
And continuances if required.
Yeah.
And I have a quick
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah.
So they would present to us on the 27th,
Yep.
and then a decision wouldn't be made until the following meeting?
It all depends.
Mhm.
Yep. There's no timeline of when the commission has to make a well, there is
There
within
is.
21 days, but
21 days from today?
from when they filed the application.
Have they done that already?
Yes, yep.
So what would the 21 days be?
It's probably a couple days after this meeting. So we always, I can tell you this offline, but it's always, once they submit, we always do a 2-week period of them getting on the next agenda. So next week would be 21 days. But
Okay.
in this case, the applicant's saying, yep, I'm happy to go to the next meeting.
Good.
Should I make a motion to require a peer review?
Yes,
Are we ready to
please.
do that? All right, so I'd like to move that the Danvers Conservation Commission hires a professional peer review for the notice of intent for 152 Endicott Street, DEP file number 14-1402.
And just paid for by the applicant, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Right, that's
yep.
part of the regulations.
Mike?
Second. Yeah, thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
I'd-
Okay, so this,
All right.
let's keep
further
this
like to
ball
move-
rolling at a certain.
I'd further like to move that we continue. Can I do that?
Yep.
Are we
Yes, go
ready?
ahead.
All right, I also would like to move that we continue the public hearing for 152 Endicott Street to our next meeting on July 27th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We'll see you again in 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Sounds
Next
great.
up
Thanks,
is a notice of intent for 154 and 170 Water Street, DEP file number 14-1405. The applicants are Chuck Crush, is part of the New England Homes for the Deaf. Is that correct, for the relationship?
Yes. Yep.
Good evening, my name is Ryan Rosine, I'm with Goddard Consultant, here on behalf of the applicant, New England Homes for the Deaf. So we're
I'm
gonna,
sorry. Can you just tilt the
Yeah, can
microphone
you-
up a little
Oh,
higher? I can't really hear you very well.
sorry. I'll just start again. Ryan Rosine with Goddard Consultant, here on behalf of the applicant, New England Homes for the Deaf. So we're gonna go through a short presentation, just going through the project. So with me tonight, we have Remy Schneider from Wind Development, Jesse Johnson, who's the civil engineer with Weston and Sampson, and then also, I think Chris McFarlane is online, who is the landscape architect from Landworks Studios. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through the existing conditions right now. So the site is a little over 16 acres. It's zoned as residential 2. It's partially developed. New England Homes for the Deaf has 2 buildings located on site, the Thompson House and a rest home, and associated site features, parking lot, drives, and other typical features. To the north of the site is the Waters River, and a portion of that has a man-made seawall. It's not all natural bank. And then the rest of the site is a field that gets regularly mowed, and there is a 200-foot wide utility easement along the southern portion of the property. So for the resource areas, we did get an ORAD last October from the commission. So we do have an active ORAD on the site confirming the wetland resource areas. So like I mentioned previously, the Water River is to the north, and it has a 200-foot riverfront area. There's also coastal bank, like I had mentioned. On the left-hand side, closer to Water Street, there's the seawall that goes along it, and then it becomes a natural bank for a portion of it, and then an armored bank to the very eastern portion of it. There's also borderland subject to flooding and land subject to coastal storm flowage. There's also 2 isolated vegetated wetlands, one there in the south central portion of the property, and then one just off-site to the very southeast corner. And there's no BVW associated with the riverfront area or coastal bank. So here's just a few pictures. The one on the left, the larger one, is of that south central isolated wetland. You can see that National Grid had recently cut all the trees and shrubs in there. They regularly do that for maintenance because they're under the power lines. The top right picture is just a picture of the field as it sits today. You can see the utility easement and high power lines on the left-hand side. And then, kind of hard to see, but in the back right side of the background is the existing New England Homes for the Deaf building, the rest home. And then the bottom right is a picture of the Waters River. So a little bit about the project. It's 120 unit senior mixed income housing with priority to deaf, deafblind, and near-deaf individuals. It has ground level parking around the building, as you can see, and a new access drive off of Water Street. And also proposing a stormwater management system in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act and the town of Danvers. So the project team did a lot of planning, as you might know, with zoning and all the neighbors to really minimize the disturbance to both the neighbors and with the site constraints with the resource areas. So quickly, no portion of the building is within the riverfront area or the IVW buffer zones. And then there's also no work in the no disturb zone, the 35-foot no disturb zone. And there's no structures in the 50-foot no build zone. There is some disturbance in the 50-foot no build zone, but that's just grading work. And then there is landscape screening to the neighbors on Jacobs Land and Jacobs Ave. So here we have sort of a general view of the project. So off to the left there is Water Street, and there's going to be a new curb cut with the access drive coming in from there. Then there's parking associated for the Thompson House, and then a small stormwater basin just to the south of the drive, kind of on the edge of that isolated wetland there in the south central portion. And then the existing, the rest home there in the center, that circular drive that's currently there is going to be reconfigured to allow for the new access drive in. And then going up to the north side of the building in the parking lot, you can see there's the larger stormwater basin. Portion of that is within the riverfront area and associated grading. Also, it's hard to see on this plan or from this distance, but there is also, we're planning to connect to the sewer easement. And I'll just quickly point that out up here. So there's a sewer easement that runs through the riverfront area, and there's an existing sewer line. So we do have to connect to that. So that's all temporary work. It will just be, trenched in and then filled back in and reseeded, and it will look similar to as it does today. And we chose that location to avoid any tree clearing. It's a little bit further of a distance that we could have done, but we didn't have to cut down any trees or shrubs within the riverfront area. So quickly, I'll just run through the landscaping plan. It's very similar to the previous plan. You can see down on the south portion of the site along Jacobs Ave, a lot of evergreen trees to screen from the neighbors along there. And then on Jacobs Landing as well to the right-hand side. Yes, there's a lot of screening of trees there. So we are putting a lot of trees and shrubs within the site for just general landscaping and for the screening to the neighbors. So I'll go through some of the impacts to the resource areas that are being proposed. So within the riverfront area, like I stated, grading and site work is needed for the stormwater basin and the sewer connection. And then there's also a very small portion of Water Street that's within riverfront area, about 1,700 square feet, I believe, that is just going to be repaved as is. It's not being enlarged or anything like that. So the stormwater management within the riverfront area is exempt from the impact calculations under the Wetlands Protection Act. And then the rest of the work is temporary in nature. It's currently disturbed, it's mowed all the time, and then it's just going to basically be regraded and reseeded with a native herbaceous cover. Within the isolated vegetated wetland, no work has actually happened inside the wetland, just inside the 100-foot buffer zone. So we've tried to minimize the work inside the buffer zone as much as possible. So a portion of the buffer zone already has impervious from the existing circular drive for the rest home. And all the way, most of the IVW in this area is, like I said, the regularly mowed lawn all the way up to the edge of the wetland. So it's already being impacted. We're not working in the disturb zone at all, and then there's only minor grading within the build zone, but we're not putting any structures in there. And then, as you can see in the table, this is according to the bylaw. Just quickly run through it. So within the 0 to 50 foot no build, there's almost 97,000 square feet within the 50 foot no build. So that means we're allowed to impact 19,000, a little over 19,000 square feet. We're only proposing about a little over 2,000. And then, so it's only about 2% of the no build zone.
And this is just more or less disturbance, you're not,
Yes, exactly. It's disturbance. We're not building anything in there. Well, so a portion, if you want to, George, if you could quickly go back to that last one. So you can see, so there is portions of the drive, the access drive and parking is within the 100-foot buffer zone of the IVW, but not within the 50-foot no build. So within the 50-foot no build, it's only minor grading. In the 100-foot buffer zone, there is some impervious surfaces going in. But we've tried to minimize it as much as possible. Yeah,
now
and then,
is erosion control required for when this grading type work is being done?
yes, yep. So we have a bunch of details for erosion control, silt fence, straw wattles, or silt socks, and then also on any slopes greater than 2 to 1, we're using erosion control matting. So that will be those will mostly be used on the stormwater basins as they're when they're exposed, they'll be protected with the matting for that.
Can I ask a quick question about the stormwater basins?
Mary, we usually will
sorry.
poll people
Yeah, yeah,
as we,
thank you.
one member at a time. So
I appreciate it.
Okay, so your bylaw requires any work within the 100-foot buffer zone to an IVW to, 1, get a waiver, and 2, provide an alternatives analysis. So we did provide that with the notice of intent and some graphics to go along with that. So that's what I'm going to go through now. So this one you see here is a no-build alternative, which isn't really feasible for the project. It's not going to offer any of the much-needed housing for this community. So we did not choose that option. Georgia, can you zoom out a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Just so it gets, yeah, okay, here we go. So in this alternative, we put the access road to the north, closer to the river, to get it outside of the IVW buffer zone. So this resulted in impacts to riverfront area, borderland subject to flooding, and buffer zone to bank. So in total, it meant 30,000 square feet of disturbance within those resource areas and 20,000 square feet of impervious within the riverfront area. And due to that and traffic concerns where it would come out on Water Street, we did not choose this alternative. Okay, and for this third alternative, we put a roadway We looked at a roadway to the south side, again, coming in off of Water Street, right along the southern property line behind all the homes on Jacobs Ave. So this resulted in 900 square feet to the of impacts to the 35-foot no disturb zone, about 2,200 square feet to the 50-foot no build zone, and a portion of the roadway would be within that no build zone, and an 11,000 square feet to the 100-foot buffer zone. And then because of this location of the road, it would not provide any options for screening to the neighbors, and I'm sure the neighbors would not want the access drive right along the back of their backyards. And additionally, the parking was located a lot further from the buildings. So for those reasons, we did not choose that alternative. For this alternative, this was one that did not have any impervious impacts to the IVW buffer zones, but it would have still required some work due to stormwater management just because of the constraints of the site. So here, we put the road coming out of Jacobs Ave there. There's a little section that actually connects to Jacobs Ave down in the southeast corner. And then most of the parking would be under the utility easement, under the high power lines. And this was rejected by the ZBA due to the neighborhood concerns. And so basically, the ZBA actually conditioned approval of the project of no access to Jacobs Ave. And then, so this is our preferred alternative. This is the current design. So it does have about a little over 26,000 square feet of temporary and permanent impacts to the 100-foot buffer zone of the IVW. And then, like I had mentioned previously, there are no impacts to the no disturb zone. So we feel that we've minimized it as much as possible, and based on traffic concerns, neighborhood concerns, and the environmental constraints, this was the best option for this site. And then, so that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions the commission has, I'd be happy to.
Just one quick one. What were the permanent impacts that as part of your proposal?
I don't have that number off the top of my head for the roadway and parking lot within the buffer zone. Jesse, do you know that off the top of your head? No. Yeah, no, I can get that number
Just
to you.
I don't necessarily need the square footage, but just point them out on the.
Oh, yeah. George, do you want to zoom in a little bit? So the permanent impacts would be here. So the purple line there is the limit of work, and then the yellow line is the 100-foot buffer zone. So between that orange line and the yellow line is between the 50 and 100-foot buffer. So, you know, portion of the access drive along the northern portion, and then coming down along the other side, there is some parking in that access drive. So that's considered the permanent impact. There is a little bit, it's really hard to see because it's faint, but the existing circular drive for the rest home, there is a little bit already within the same buffer zone.
Okay, but it's outside of the 50.
Yes, it's outside of the 50, and all the drives and parking lot, all impervious is outside of the 50-foot, no build.
Okay, and there's a separate stormwater plan put together for this? There's handling the water coming off of driveways and parking lots.
Yes, so we did include a stormwater report in that, so it meets all stormwater standards.
Okay, just curious where the water's going to go. Okay, Mary, I know you were anxious to ask a question, so go ahead.
I'm still new. I was just curious, who's going to be responsible for maintaining the stormwater detention basins after the construction is complete? And then what is required to perform proper maintenance?
So, Jesse, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Hi, Jesse Johnson, Weston and Sampson Engineers, out of the Reading office, civil engineering consultant on the project. So there are two basins, standard infiltration basins design, and then upstream of those you have deep sump catch basins and you have sediment forebays. So you have your two stages of treatment and then going ultimately to the infiltration basins. Those will be maintained by NEHD and Wind Development. It's a joint venture, but Wind Development will probably take lead on making sure the annual maintenance is taken care of, and they each BMP that I just mentioned has its own separate maintenance requirements, whether biannually or annually. Catch basins, for instance, typically are biannually in the spring after the plowing operations, and then again in the fall to get it prepped and ready for the winter operations. So we have a draft O&M of what you would typically provide for each of those BMPs, a map showing where they're located, draft log sheets. Those are all included in the appendix of the stormwater report that we provided. And those would be provided, obviously, to the maintenance manager of the facility, and they would be using those logs, hopefully, throughout the year of taking care of the BMPs and notifying everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Mike, any questions?
Well, just, with regards to the waivers, what is the area of work that you're looking for a waiver in, the 35 or the 50?
So for the work, we're not doing any work within the 35-foot.
None.
None. As you can see, so the red line there is the 35-foot no disturb. So the purple line is the limit of work, and so we're just outside of that in a couple locations.
So how many square feet in the 50 are you looking for a waiver?
Well, I think the waiver is for the whole 100-foot, if I read your bylaw correctly.
Correct. So
They need waivers for the 100 and the 50.
So historically, the waivers are required for permanent new alteration. The commission has times issued a waiver for due diligence for just altering in the buffer, even though the end result is going to be grass or loamed and seeded or some seed mix. But we rarely see this. If anything, this may be the first project the commission has under our new bylaw. So only locally in Danvers do we say you need a waiver if you're working within 100 feet of an isolated vegetated wetland. So they need a waiver no matter what of any work within in between the yellow line and the blue dashed line.
But it's just a waiver just for being within the 100.
Yeah, it's
The
just
fact
waiver
they're
to
in
be,
there, they need
yeah,
a waiver.
yeah. And there's no, we don't have a limit on explicitly the amount you can alter in the buffer, the whole 100 feet of an isolated vegetated wetland, but we do have a requirement of how much you permanently alter in the 0 to 50. And what they're saying is there's no work 0 to 35, but there's temporary impacts for grading.
Trenching,
Yep,
just the trenching, is that correct?
and the sewer line.
And the sewer line?
So the sewer line and all that stuff to the north is not within the 50-foot or 35 or within 100 feet of the IVW. So if we're specifically talking, so that is all riverfront area, which the stormwater stuff like the sediment the level spreader there that comes out of there, that's a stormwater feature, so that's exempt from the impact calculation of riverfront area. And then the grading around the stormwater basin is considered temporary impact because it's currently grass and vegetation, and we're just gonna regrade it and turn it back into that. Now, in terms of the isolated wetland, we're not doing work in 35. We're doing minor grading. Most of the minor grading is in relation to the small stormwater basin there on the left-hand side of that IVW, which is the same thing. We're just gonna return it to a similar condition. It's gonna be reseeded, so it's gonna have vegetation in it, but we're just.
I'm just a little unclear. So, I mean, there's no structures going in.
Right.
The only new impervious pavement going in that 100 foot is between the 50 and the 100.
Yeah. And really nothing really within the 50. We're really talking about the 100, aren't we?
Yeah, from the 50 to 100 that's where pavement's being laid,
Yeah.
but from 50 to 0, it's only temporary grading.
Right.
That's what we want to be sure
Yeah.
the water's handled properly too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's pretty minor in
Yeah.
general, since it's already fairly impacted, the buffer zone.
Thank you.
All set? Vanessa, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question about snow storage, if you have planned that out at all, because I just don't want anything to be plowed into that isolated area, because I don't know if you have identified any snow storage areas on site, but.
Yes, there are some. You would have to look into the full plan set. I don't,
Do you know what page?
trying to figure what page it's on. Jesse, dude. I think Jesse's trying to look for it right now, same as with me. Off the top of my head, I don't.
No, because I watched some of the ZBA hearings on that, I think, but, because the ZBA had no
I don't recall the sheet off the top of my head, but we did put a lot of thought into the snow storage to make sure that we were considering the location of the landscaping, right? We always want to make sure that we're not proposing snow storage right on top of where we're putting trees, but also the light poles. And then we also made sure that the grading design, the way we have it, that everything is tilted inward in the parking lots, so that if snow is stacked up just on the shoulders of the parking or along the driveways, everything is going to run back into the site rather than off. So if you look at the parking area adjacent to the building, closest to, like that, for instance, we have our catch basins in the center of the parking, so that if we do have snow melt, hopefully we try to get it back into the site, and then we send everything around the site and all the way to the basin on the other side. We looked at iterations of the stormwater, and we originally tried to put something between that parking area and that isolated wetland, but it ended up being too impactful, and we actually then went through the effort of just trying to get it all the way around to the other side. So, you know, we can show snow storage areas, which we did and had it peer reviewed, but also I try to look at it realistically, like what is a plow actually going to do when it comes in there versus where we tell them. They're not going to look at a page, obviously, before they go in there. So we're trying to look at it like if a plow comes in, takes a turn to enter our site, starts pushing the snow when we're close to that wetland area. Again, we have shoulder areas provided, and again, trying to tilt all that back interior to our stormwater control system and not obviously towards the wetlands.
Yeah, we've just had issues on other locations where they've just like plowed it right in, which we're not,
Yes.
we're not
Yeah.
interested in that.
Yep.
So the road is pretty close in that area to the 50. Is there any sort of like fencing considered, or possibly, we do have like the conservation medallions that we require sometimes, but have you guys thought about that at all? If there should be some fencing to keep people and debris out of that isolated wetland, or even just the posts with the medallions? Have you considered any of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. We actually are matching the current closest point. So I think Ryan had mentioned there's an existing cul-de-sac, and it is kind of hard to see on here, but that closest touch point, if you will, to that wetland, there's a cul-de-sac there that we're going to tear out the cul-de-sac and then put our driveway back in its place, and we're matching curb line to curb line, so we're not encroaching any further, but we are changing the grade, so that's what's requiring us to grade a little bit between the 50 and the 35 and take out some really scrub vegetation. Frankly, it's not valuable vegetation that you're seeing in green there that's within that 50 to 100. And because of the grade drop, we are proposing guide rail through there to make sure obviously a car doesn't go off the side. So we'll have at least that,
Okay.
but certainly would be open to putting in the medallions or anything else that you think would be a good deterrent in that region as we're closer to the wetlands.
Okay. The guardrail is good, because that at least will keep some things out.
Yeah, and it's again for plow deterrent. It's going to be something that they're going to have to go the other way with it and push it to the left-hand side.
Okay. And then, how long is your overall timeline on this project?
Typically, it's a 2-year from when they start. That's what they usually estimate, anywhere from 1.5 to 2 years from when they get going. But it's not slated to start. If everything goes well with funding sources, I believe they're looking at fourth quarter of next year before they even start.
Okay.
So Q4 2024. And then it would be completed in Q4 2026,
Okay. So you may have to be back to us for an extension.
eventually, yes.
Okay. All right, that's all I have.
One other question. What was the relief required at the ZBA? So this wasn't like a 40B project or something?
No, there actually is some regulations in your current bylaws that allow for a project like this. We needed relief from the overall height of the structure and what was the other one? And the number of units, the density of the units. For the
Density
area.
and height.
Within the structure, actually, within the
They ended up
structure.
taking a floor off.
Yeah, that's right, they did take a
Yeah, we were
floor
up at
off,
4
yeah.
and we came down to
Alright.
3.
Thank you,
Sure.
that's all I had.
One quick question, in one of your pictures that showed some stumps, and you said that the utility had gone through,
Yeah, I can
mean-
even talk to that, sure. That
where was that on this? Right
that
there?
is the IVW, yeah. So you can see the high tension lines over the top of it there.
Right.
And grid goes in frequently, and we've been in
So they
communication.
can just go through there and clear that out by right?
That's,
Yeah.
Is that,
yeah.
Yeah, it's,
where-
it
and where-
falls under the maintenance right of
Have an
way.
easement.
Yeah, they notify me to say, hey, we're doing this, but we're allowed to do it.
Yeah,
So
you
they'd
can
be
see
worrying
those
about the
three-
snow, isn't the,
I know.
isn't the big problem.
It helps though.
So if you see those 3 lines, the 3 lines that go through the green, they're perfect, right there. That's those high tension lines.
All right,
And how often do they do that?
I don't know, honestly. But that was
Okay, so it's
pretty
sort of-
fresh cut.
And so that thicker line across, that's the edge of the easement?
That's right, and it goes all the way to the property line on the other side, so that's the 200-foot limit right there.
So no matter what we say, they can still go through there and
Yeah.
do what they want.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sure there's public comment, so would anyone like to ask questions, offer a comment? Ma'am?
Gotta bring this way down. Sandy Lane, town meeting member, precinct 3, also in a butter, and I live at 17 Jacobs Avenue. Roughly a year ago, we started getting the dribs and drabs about something's going on in the field. This was coming from the neighbors on that side. They've been watching, and sure enough, finally the project came out. Alan Fioranti and myself were appointed spokespeople for the project and trying to get communication with the Home for the Deaf and WIN and the neighbors. So basically, we had a good thing going with WIN and the Home for the Deaf. They've been great neighbors. We've never had a problem with them. And the present staff over there now has continued with that. We did ask, when this is finished, if they would please appoint, rotate a position, somebody from the neighborhood to get information from them. So that is an item. Where this project is coming to the end, we decided, Alan and myself, to go in 2 different directions, and he lives opposite me, I'm over here. We both went through every single piece of paper that we have had during this whole year project. And when you look at it real hard, you can find some problems. And we came up with not really problems. I have to admit, we were very, very picky in what we wrote down. But we did come up with 6 items that we felt needed clarification. So we set up a Zoom meeting, and this, I believe, was on July 5th. Don't hold me to that date. At any rate, all of our questions were presented to the Home for the Deaf and WIN. They answered them very directly. The answers were great. We were all very satisfied. I did have one question, and you kind of addressed it tonight, as to a snow plan. We asked that, and everybody said, I don't know. And I says, well, I don't think you got this far without one, but, you know, let's take a look at it. And my concern with the snow plan really was that I didn't want to see runoff going to the wetlands. I'm a nature lover. I like to see the coyotes. People hate them. I don't have a problem with them. We have anything from insects, skunks, dogs. We've had a gorgeous eagle that's been hanging around down there. We want to protect what we can. At any rate, we took the answers, the questions and the answers, we dispersed that information through the neighborhood on Jacobs Avenue. And Olive asked that, you know, if you have any further questions, get in touch with us, we'll bring them up. Apparently, they were all satisfied because nobody had any further questions. The Zoom seemed to have solved all the problems that we have. But I did, as I say, I did come up with a snow plan that I hope that you had. And another question that I'm asking for somebody else is the access road when you're coming out of Jacobs and you're going, the second entrance, just prior to the bridge is a rock, stone type road. Is that going to be hot topped? I don't know which one you're referring to. It would be just before the bridge going out, yeah, by the condos.
That one's gonna stay as is because portions of it fall within the 200
That's right.
riverfront zone, and so we
Can't hot top it at all.
Correct.
All right.
We also, with the condos, don't want to feel more welcoming for additional traffic.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, that answers my questions. I think everything out of Jacobs Avenue has been taken care of. I think it's been a very good company to deal with, and whenever we've asked a question, we've got a prompt answer back from them, and I think
Good.
that's good.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
service to your neighbors. Is there any other questions or comments?
May I respond to one comment, please?
Certainly. Just let us know who you are, please.
Remy Schneider with Wind Development Company. Georgia, if you have sheet L1B, oof, I know, it is in our filing, and it does show snow storage locations. So we don't have to go through it, but I did want to just point out that there are snow storage locations called out on the plans. We didn't get this far without them called out and addressed. And Wind Residential, our property management team, also manages buildings throughout New England and works with snow removal providers so that in the event that there are significant snows and snow is mounting up, we'll haul off the snow if the snow storage locations are at max capacity. So you can kind of see right in there, yeah, snow storage removal. And then there's also parking spaces identified. Those 3 spaces kind of shaded out.
Right here.
Yeah. So there's locations called out around the parking of the building, and then also those 3 spaces as well for a larger bank in the event of significant snow.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing that we had done, we had 25 conditions on this project that we want. Anyway, I'm sure if you look at it now, the tally might be less because they combined it into paragraphs, different things. But as I must say, 25 started. We were impressed with that. Would have been page 26, but my printer ran out of ink.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Sure.
Sir?
That last photo was pretty good there. So my name is Chris Farron. I live on 8 Jacobs Landing. So my property probably abuts the construction closest. But there was a couple things I wanted to ask, and maybe we get some answers to as well. So when we talk about within the 100-foot buffer zone, there's also another breach here within the 100-foot buffer zone in this space. So this is my property here. This is the 100-foot buffer zone. But as we look at the elevation plan, this is I'll show the topographical pieces of it as well, but it's a very steep hill from here, which is probably about 15 feet, 10 feet from my property line, which first of all is, I would not say it's under dispute at this point, but the plans that they have and the angle of this property line and what we have in our deeds are different. Okay, so that's something we'll continue to work through, but my concern is, this is probably 25, 30-foot elevation from the top of this down to where the wetlands is are. So I'm just not sure typically, when we have runoff, my big concern is obviously my backyard here, which is very steep here, but also the wetlands, and you get the 100-foot buffer zone here, the 50-foot buffer zone here. Runoff for me is very, very important. And how are we gonna bring stormwater away from this space into the other direction? So that's one of my concerns as I look at it. This landing was filled at one point, so it's very clay-like. We do get water that comes down, that infiltrates down. Now, that's not part of the wetlands, obviously, but that is a concern of ours within these houses, within, as we look at 10 and 8 acres.
You guys have an answer for stormwater?
Do you have any other, I can address them all at once, or?
No, I think really looking at that space, obviously we have the space over here that we've already addressed pretty much. I'm really concerned about this corner, obviously, and then how we're going to pull everything away from this space because of the topographical configuration here, as well as we're going to be looking at a kind of a profile. We're going to be looking at a layout to understand, because we're pulling this down 15 feet, but this is a very steep property, so we're already looking at that.
Are you concerned about the direction of a flow, or it's going to change?
Yeah, because
Maybe they could
this is
address that.
considered, this is the 35, this is the 50, this is the 100, right? And this is all going to be construction here, right? This is going to be new pavement. I want to make sure we're pulling everything away from going down into this space. And also, obviously, my back.
Georgia, do you mind going to C107?
Yeah. It's probably at the beginning, right?
So
There we go.
this is our grading and drainage plan. If you can zoom in on that same area we were just discussing.
Oh, sorry.
So, it's okay.
It's very touchy.
So, understandable concern because of those slopes, but what we did in this region, and I think a good thing to start with is our proposed grading. You can see those numbers there, 35, 34, going down to 29. You can see down to 23. So we are indeed cutting that down significantly, and that was by design to try to lessen the impact of the building itself and the height. We wanted to try to get that building down as much as we possibly could. But what that did actually is it leaves a knoll, if you will. So that's kind of the height of land right there. It goes up to 36, so it keeps going up still a little bit more beyond what I'm showing here for the grading. Then it starts to tilt back down to the other side and grade towards the wetlands. So everything that we're doing for disturbance, which is what's shown in the darker lines, is going to be draining towards our site and not away from us towards the wetlands or towards the neighbor. If you follow that same thought now, where those proposed grades, those dark lines tie into the existing lighter dash lines, those are the existing grades. What we're doing there along the property line is we're creating, if anyone knows what an esker is, it's essentially a narrow esker that we're creating that goes down in elevation as you follow towards the top of the page. And we're trying to create almost just a small mound, if you will. It's going to be about 8 feet wide. It's going to have a little bit of a height of land, but it's going to gently grade down. And what that'll do is it will ensure that absolutely no runoff from our project will ever go towards the abutter. It'll always be tilted back into our property. And that area that's shown untouched will be planted. It'll have trees, it'll have vegetation, but it'll basically show that we are not grading even up to the property line, and that we're making sure that all the runoff is directed into our site, and that anything that was even going to the property to the right is going to be lessened because we're now taking the grades that were existing, contributing to that prior, and we're gonna be cutting those down and flipping it, if you will, to tilt it back towards our
So
site.
where does assuming you're directing the water, where does it go, or does it get picked up somewhere?
Everything is getting picked up by stormwater structures within the paved areas. So you see that CB 16, that's a catch basin, and then it goes into that DMH.
The flow, the direction of flow you were talking about, where is that getting picked up?
So all of that, yeah, you see a flow arrow right there that George was highlighting with a 1.5%. That's showing you the direction of flow. So that's making sure that we have all the runoff going to that catch basin in that area, and then to the right of that is what we call a break line, where you see the arrows showing both directions, and then the one up above that at the 1.2%, that's indicating that all the runoff is going towards that next catch basin, that's CB 17.
What does that percent represent?
That's the slope of the roadway that's proposed.
Oh. Thank you. Does that answer his question?
That's what I was looking at. I don't think so.
No?
Yeah, the only other question, now thinking about this, we just looked at the snow plan. Do we have the snow plan that shows for this space too on this roadway?
What was that? Is there? Okay, I think it was at the end.
It's L1B.
Okay.
Judge's good findings.
So it doesn't look like there is any, but I'll let the development team answer.
It's a fair question. So we do show a small shoulder strip about 2 to 3 feet wide. There you go. Yep, right there. But because, again, where all that planting is proposed, all those circles, those are all new trees. Those are all at the height of that land. So everything from those center point of those trees is tilted back towards our lot. So there'll never be any snow or melt that goes towards the abutters. It'll always head back in towards our project.
I guess there's nothing else on these plans here, but just one question for the board. The way I understand, I know this property was being looked at in past years for sale, and I think other developers were looking at this space. Knowing one of them being CP Berry that had looked at this property, I believe that there was, I'm curious if they had gone in front of the board, because talking with them, I think there was restrictions within the 200-foot building zone of the property here. I just want to make sure we're being consistent with how we look at developers versus this property as well. So is there a way to understand if there was ever restrictions put on other developments going into this space? I'm just not sure.
The restrictions placed on what?
Within the zone of the river as well as these wetlands before.
He's wondering if there were previous restrictions that
yeah.
apply now.
Previous applications and approvals that had restrictions.
Yeah, that's
Not
what
that
I'm
I'm
asking.
aware of.
Thought
I
maybe
don't
it was-
believe an
okay.
order of conditions has been issued. But I will say the standards, if something were to be filed previously, the Wetlands Protection Act standards have remained fairly untouched in the past years. So I'd say they apply the same standards from
Okay.
the same book.
Fair.
So it's going to be
That's
the
fair.
same exact rules for riverfront.
Excellent. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Okay, is there anyone else? No? All right, I guess we can close the public hearing. I can make a motion to that effect.
I move that we close the public hearing for 154, 170 Water Street, DEP file number 14-1405, applicant Chuck Crush, New England Homes for the Deaf.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so the first order of business is a waiver required for disturbance, but no permanent structures within the 35 and 50-foot buffers as shown during the presentation. So if someone can make a motion to that effect, we'll vote on it.
I'll make a motion that we grant a waiver for the temporary work proposed to be done in the 50-foot and for the work to be done in the 100. And in the event it turns out that they need to do anything in the 35, that they would have to come back to us for that.
Correct.
That's a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and finally, we need to vote on issuing an order of conditions with any other special conditions. You're on a roll, Mike. so-
Yeah, all right, I'll make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for 154, 170 Water Street, DEP file number 14-1405, applicant Chuck Crush, New England Homes for the Deaf, with, did we talk about any special conditions other than snow that,
None that come to my mind,
well,
You
what
wanna
about
put-
snow removal? I think she
But-
talked about that.
but that's all in the plans.
Well, she talked about that they sometimes will remove snow. Is that part of,
I think that's pretty standard. I don't think we need a special condition
I
on
don't think we
that.
need a special condition?
No, but what do you think about the placards?
Yeah, did you
Like
wanna
the
put those
pencil-
on the
I think,
guardrail?
medallions and/or placards as required. You mean for snow areas?
No,
No.
for the
Oh, for the-
delineation of the wetland.
Yeah,
border of the
for
wetland.
the placards be applied. And how far apart do we generally put those?
Well, we usually do them 20 feet, either along the limit of work or along the buffer zone itself. It also sounded like they would be putting in guardrail in certain areas, so you could put the placard on the guardrail because it looked like it was really on that line,
If
but,
the guardrails are on the line?
exactly, and I think in that other area near this gentleman's property on the back side of the building, that would require a post.
Placards, medallions as discussed at the hearing tonight.
We can work on it.
And if it works along the guardrails, otherwise along
The limit of work.
the limit of
Okay.
work. Yeah. All right, that's about it, I think.
Just a quick question, Georgia, as this project progresses, and I think I heard it wouldn't even be until the latter half of next year, right?
Yeah.
But we're just maintaining, because we don't have any, there's no mitigation going on, but, that disturbance within the buffer zone, so we want to have that for the shortest amount of time as possible.
Yes.
So if someone is going to be inspecting periodically?
Yeah,
They
Brian
will-
Cassidy will be out there at least once a week.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the motion is out there, waiting for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so good luck. Next up is a notice of intent for 130R Water Street, DP file number 14-1403. The applicants are Wendy Cheever and Liberty Marina, and I believe that Bill Manuel is here to represent.
Good evening. Bill Manuel from Wetlands and Land Management in Danvers. Sticking right in the same neighborhood, right across the river. This is the Liberty Marina, and a portion of the seawall at the marina, which has a Chapter 91 license, has failed. I understand that the commission went on their annual boat trip and took notice of this particular property, and lo and behold, I was, a couple weeks later, filed a notice of intent to rebuild that wall. Formally, if you can just zoom down, or pan down, actually pan up then.
Zoom out
We had the
first.
surveyor locate, yeah, even zoom out a little bit, just to put it in perspective.
Oops, sorry.
This is the building. We had the surveyors locate the corners of the building, just for perspective. And this is the kind of the common property line with the, I believe it's the Dunkin' Donuts property that is fronting on Water Street. And so it's this initial section of wall. It's about 240 feet from the fence line to where it ties into the existing parking lot. It was a former timber wall, and the only thing that's left of it is some portions, some remnant portions of the wall, and we show some timbers that are along the water line. There are tieback rods that are still evident in the debris where they basically went through the timber wall and were embedded into some sort of feature that was embedded in the slope. That's still covered. I don't know what that was, but we're going to do a very similar design. In this case, we're gonna, rather than build a timber wall with driving piles and affixing timber to the outside of it, we're going to drive sheet pile. There is already a length of sheet pile that has been installed at some time in the past. And what we're gonna do is tie right into that and extend it right along the base of the slope, right along these timbers that used to be the extent of the former wall. So once we drive those piles, we will now have sort of isolated the waterfront. Excuse me, it's sheet piling, not piles. We drive the sheet piles. We'll now have
Excuse me, what's a sheet pile, Bill?
It is a piece of corrugated steel.
Like, it's what I thought it was.
Mhm.
That's what it is.
And it's,
Not individual piles with a connection, they're actually lengths of sheet, how long?
they're about 3 feet wide or so. I think they come in different lengths, but they're generally about 3 feet wide, and they have a receiving
interlock?
end. They're sort of corrugated for strength, and they have a receiving end on one side and a joining end, and the two piles just slide right into each other, so it's a continuous connection.
Is that work tide sensitive?
It is best to set them at the low tide so you can see what's going on, what you're doing, and then once you start driving them, I don't think it's very tide sensitive.
Thank you. Sorry to
but
interrupt.
There's a good diagram of what's gonna happen. The sheet pile will be driven down. Once that is installed, the waterfront will be essentially isolated by the sheet pile. And then what needs to happen behind that wall is they will construct a poured concrete wall in the slope and use tieback rods to stabilize the sheet piling, the vertical sheet piling. That'll be affixed, go right through the wall, and that will prevent the backfill from pushing out on the wall and tipping it over. So there'll be what's called a whaler on the outside of the wall, the bolt, long tie rod right through the whaler, and then right through the dead man wall, and that would stabilize the wall.
And that's a vertical rod to that tieback?
This is a vertical sheet pile.
Yeah, but
And
to
a
the right of
horizontal
that.
rod, and this is a concrete dead man wall.
Oh. With concrete in between the two?
No, in between the two would be just earth backfill.
Oh, okay.
And it would basically restore what was there. All of that retained fill has been long ago washed away. And so, what you see today is just a sort of a rocky, rubbly slope that goes from low water right up to the edge of the pavement.
So what do you put in there? Where do you get the fill to put in there? You just bring fill in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Be clean.
Clean
earth.
fill?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. So this is shown on a license plan. We will need to go back. It was shown as a timber wall in the license plan, so we're going to have to amend the Chapter 91 license to show the new structure, the new materials, and we'll also need a permit from Army Corps of Engineers. So this is the first of those 3 permits that we're going to need. We can't proceed any further along the permitting path until we obtain an order of conditions from your commission.
All set, Bill?
Yep.
One quick question, why the steel wall instead of like concrete blocks? Cost?
For ease of installation, the concrete blocks, you would have to excavate out further into that slope and then create a stone base on it, and it's more of an intricate design and a more intrusive design.
Is this being used anywhere else along our rivers, this style?
Well, there already is a section of it right here.
Just
And-
one section, I mean, you've got 250 feet of collapsed wall.
Yep.
And we're just seeing the concrete blocks being popular in many other places.
Yeah, on they're popular for, residential use a lot because they're easy to install. A lot of people can
Right.
do them.
Yeah. Is the steel gonna corrode over time?
No.
It would probably have to be coated, like, you know, just about everything along the waterfront, to use a coated steel. I don't know what the longevity is, but
Wouldn't we want to know that? We want to know that. What do you, I mean,
I don't know, I'm not for sure if it's within our realm to say, all right, you have to use this material, it's just that, you know,
but this is less expensive, is that why you do it this way? It's quicker, less money?
well, this is what the marine contractor suggested would be the best way to stabilize this slope.
can you go back to him and ask if?
How long it'll
concrete,
last?
The concrete blocks?
Yep. We can't close the hearing tonight anyway, because I'm still waiting for Division of Marine Fisheries comments on this. So I'll be happy to ask the marine contractor what the longevity is.
Okay.
There must be some paper, there must be a pamphlet or something they put out, or something to talk about that type of wall, right?
I don't know if the steel manufacturers issue a cut sheet or anything. I'll look for something.
Well, how do people know about these things? They have to get advertised, you know, in the trade books or wherever they.
Yeah, I'll look for something from
Just,
the marine
you know what, because we
contractor.
like the information going forward for ourselves, like how long do they last, do they rust, are they better?
Okay, all set, Mike?
Yeah.
Vanessa, I see you scribbling away there, you must have
Well,
something.
no, because my pen ran out, but I just had a question about, it's a little hard to tell at this scale, but are you going further into the river than what the existing timber wall was? Are you,
No,
or,
we're-
like, how much further out are you going?
About a foot or so.
Okay.
They just didn't want to do it exactly on that timber footprint, because you don't know what junk is under there.
Okay,
So it's just right in front of it, and you can see the timbers, we had them located, they're really right along right, just in front of it.
okay, and then
Yep.
so if you are going further out, is that in line with the Chapter 91 license, or that would be part of your request to modify the Chapter 91 license, like going slightly more into the river?
Yeah, anything that's seaward of the mean high water line requires that licensing.
Yeah,
So whether we were directly on that line or a foot in front of it, really doesn't matter in the license.
Are you allowed to go further beyond than what your permit
Right.
Yep.
currently allowed?
Yep.
That's not up to us.
Huh?
So what he's saying is it's not up to us, because he has to go to them.
No, it's up to your review, but yes, you're allowed, and we did that on 51 Riverview. We went out slightly in front of that repaired seawall. I think on 22 Riverside as well. Yeah, you
Because
typically
what's in there, Bill, is it's gonna just stay there, so rather than trying to
That's
dig
right.
all that out,
Exactly
you wanna
right.
go beyond it, isn't that how that works?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay.
well, it sounds like it will get reviewed at the Chapter 91, like, or through that permitting approval.
Yes, and Division of Marine Fisheries is going to weigh in. They have about another 7 days or so to submit comments, but you'll get comments from them. Then we'll, assuming we get an order of conditions, we'll move on with the Army Corps and the Chapter 91 folks.
Okay, but right now, sorry, Mary, do you have any questions?
I just want to know if you have an image of what it's going to look like? Because it's all metal, right? Or even like that's going to be, what is it going to look like? Obviously,
Well,
we know what it looks like
I
on the
know
radar.
you've probably seen sheet piling without saying, hey, that's sheet piling over there, but basically along the waterfront, you see this corrugated steel wall. It looks like one continuous wall,
I think I've seen it.
but it's really comes in narrower width sections that are driven down, and as I said, the two ends interlock.
And it's silver or black?
It generally weathers, to a natural earthen color,
But is it silver?
It's generally not silver. Silver would probably mean galvanized or something
Yeah,
like that.
galvanized,
but-
yeah. Thank you.
Set? Is there any public comment? None?
Okay.
Okay, so I think what we're hearing is that you're waiting for comment from the fisheries
Right.
people. So it's not, and you're gonna get an answer to the question on the concrete blocks versus the steel.
Yep.
Okay, I guess if someone can make a motion, we'll continue to, hopefully our next meeting, Bill, that's.
Yeah,
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for 130R Water Street, DEP file number 14-1403 to our next meeting on July 27th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, just a quick word on logistics. I have to leave probably by 9:15, but this is our last agenda item. The last item is going to be continued. So just, if we get to 9 o'clock and I get antsy, I'm just gonna
Well, what
see
else,
if we
what
can
else do we
continue.
have?
That's it, just this last one. But if it
Oh,
gets into a long discussion, I just wanted people to know
Yeah.
that I'm gonna have to.
If we're still talking about at 9 o'clock, we're in for some trouble.
Oh, good. I like your optimism.
Are we ready?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Bill Manuel from Wetlands and Land Management. Ed and Kathleen Reed are right there on the end, and this is their property. Again, right in the same neighborhood. This property actually abuts the New England Home for the Deaf property right along the water. And this is a project for an elevated pier, ramp, and float. Whenever we have these types of projects, the very first thing I do is contact a harbor master in Georgia, and we go out there during low tide and we run our proposals by them. And we did that back in March. We got some feedback from Harbor Master Sanborn, and that was all incorporated into this particular design. If you remember the pier at 15 Mead Street, it was prefabricated aluminum sections, exact same design. What this allows us to do is space the piles much further apart than timber framing. The pier itself is 170 feet long, extending from the yard, Mr. Reed's yard. The pile boxes are 42 and a half feet in between piles. So that's a pretty significant span in between piles. It allows us to reduce the number of piles by generally a factor of 3. We did this whole pier design, including the floats, with a total of 14 piles. The piles will be driven. They work off a barge, a work barge. The ramp is 40 feet long, and we have 2 floats. One is an 8 by 12 for the ramp to land on, and then a 20 by 5.2 float on the outboard side. We have 3 feet of water under the float at low tide on the inboard side, and 5 feet of water under the float on the outboard side, so where the boat is not going to ground out. The float is never going to touch bottom. That we always look for that, try to achieve that on these floats, and that way there's no impact to the river bottom. Everything is done off a barge, and in line with the last project we did, matter of fact, on 51 Riverview, where Division of Marine Fisheries said we don't even really want to see a siltation boom. We didn't add one. I put a note on the plan why we didn't add one, but I would expect that Marine Fisheries would probably echo that same comment. So speaking of Marine Fisheries, we do not have their comment on this one either, so we are going to have to continue. But this is exactly the same as the pier that you approved back at 15 Mead Street. So, and I should point out, we have a very favorable letter from the harbor master who stated that this design has incorporated all of his comments.
I'm sorry, Bill, if I missed it, what's the square footage of the floats?
The floats are 200 square feet. There's an 8 by 12 landing float, and then a 20 by 5.2 foot outboard float, or finger float, if you will, to where the boat would moor up against both of these.
Okay, and they're in permanent water.
Correct.
And the dock is always, what is it, 4 feet above high tide? It has to allow
It will,
passage underneath.
in
a certain width.
you're talking these,
No, now, I'm sorry, back to the pier and the walkout.
yep, it is, that's a very good question. There is a piece of salt marsh just at the bottom of this riprap embankment, and Division of Marine Fisheries likes to see a 1.5 to 1 height to width ratio, so we're providing 6 feet of clearance from the bottom of the stringer to the salt marsh elevation,
And a 4-foot width of the,
4-foot width of the pier.
good. Okay, let me ask other members if they have any questions. Mike?
What's the clearance for navigation underneath the pier?
At low tide, this is a mud flat,
Right.
and at high tide, let's see,
It's got to be 4 or 5 feet.
yeah, it's probably up at the very shore. It's going to be, I would say, well, at high tide, how high up the embankment does the tide come? Ed?
Bottom of the seawall, on a regular tide. On a real high tide, maybe 2 or 3 feet up.
Hmm.
So, probably 6 feet on the average.
Yep, so, it's probably, that makes it about 3 or 4 feet, 2 to 4 feet, depending on the tide.
landward, on the closest to land.
Like, I
Yeah.
think I see it, mean high water 4.5, and then I think I saw higher, if you, George, are you controlling the plan?
Yeah.
And it says, can you scroll so we can see up higher, a little higher? And then the bottom of stringer 10, so wouldn't that be 5.5
Yeah.
feet?
Yep,
So
Right,
isn't
that's what I
one of our concerns that someone could pass underneath with a rowboat or a kayak or such?
well, at points during the mid-tide, that would be able to happen. I think at the high tide, they'd have to squat down a little bit, wouldn't be very comfortable.
Are there
Do we have a-
regulations around
Do we have
that?
a standard for that, Georgia?
So we say at least 5 feet above mean high water. And I believe that's
5
copied
feet
from
clearance from high tide to
the bottom of the pier.
the
from
bottom of the
Yeah,
joist or whatever they.
Yeah.
and so mean high water from what's documented on the plan. So we
Well,
require mean high water, which
Are we
was-
gonna have 5 feet?
You will
Yes.
have, yes.
And what's the closest, you can't see from this is a smaller plan, but are there piers, how close is the closest pier to that one?
Yep. So we lined it up so the outboard side of this was directly in line with the outboard side of the neighboring floats, and it's
Okay,
76
Could you
feet.
just say what you mean by the outboard side?
The river side,
Okay.
as opposed to the shore side. So the river side lines up with the adjacent float, and it's 76 feet separation.
Okay, and the harbor master has no problem with this?
I won't put words in his mouth, but he did submit a letter, a comment letter. You
Apologize,
should
I have
have
not
that,
seen it.
and he said this plan reflects the comments that were given to us at the site walk.
You were there, Georgia, as part of the sidewalk?
Yes, and I would say the biggest comment that Chris had that really isn't included in our base conditions that we already include anyway, was that the Chapter 91 license number be posted on the pier, on the seaward side.
And that's to be
What were
determined, right?
some of the concerns he addressed, Bill? Because we don't have that letter.
Mr. Sanborn is always worried about the proximity to the navigational channel, or the channel. There's not an established channel here in this part of the river, but he's always concerned about maintaining that channel, and he's always concerned about the owner being aware that if the channel were to be dredged, they are responsible for removing the piles on a, temporary while the dredge is ongoing.
And how, during the winter months, how much of that gets broke down, or does the pier continue, the pier stays, or?
The pier stays, that's permanent. The ramp gets hoisted up. You can see there's going to be an overhead ramp hoist on these outer piles. And then, Ed, you're going to float just more of the floats offshore?
To do what? No?
There's just more of them offshore, so it's just like a big flat boat.
Yeah, okay. That's all my questions, thank you.
Hey, Vanessa, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Ann, I'm
Mary.
sorry, Mary.
Mary.
It's
Well, Ann's usually.
Anne usually does sit there, so we do need to preface that for people.
It's all good.
It's been a long day for the chairman today. So you had no questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you, though.
Is there any public comment?
I'm Trip Knox, 11 Jacobs Landing. I have the pier next to it. And I have no objections to the pier going in.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thanks.
Shall I make a motion to continue?
Yes, because we are going to have to.
Yep.
Right, because of don't have the DMF comments in the next meeting, July 27th, Bill, does that work for you?
Perfect.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing for 12 Jacobs Landing, DEP file number 14-1404 to our next meeting on July 27th.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so our July 27th meeting is busy.
Yeah, we're getting busy now.
I presume, George, I don't have the formal agenda in front of me. That's our last item? This,
We have to,
So, we need to formally continue July 27th, or we want to
oh, for
acknowledge
item
for 9
number 8.
Tibbetts.
So, all right, so the next item, 9 Tibbetts Ave, DEP file number 14-1338. The applicant is Brian LeBlanc. They have requested to continue to July 27th. So if someone can make a motion to that effect, please?
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for 9 Tibbetts Ave, DEP file number 14-1338 to July 27th.
All in favor? I'm sorry, give me a second, Mike.
Yeah, I'll second.
Oh, actually, Mike is gonna have to.
I wasn't sure, well, I've actually done work for him.
Wait, you're gonna have to recuse
Just-
yourself.
Yeah.
Ann will be back.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. But
But I think just a second, just a question of
continuing,
continuing,
I'll
I guess, okay.
second, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. There's no other old or new business?
I did add 2 sets of minutes, but I realized that this was a 9-item memo, so I came in here prepared that, perfect, so
I did
next
read them.
meeting,
Oh,
we will
good.
address the minutes.
Okay, if someone can make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye. You're right on that one.
All right.
Jump right on that one.
Good.
Thank you guys
Okay.
very much.
And guess
What,
what?
you
The
say
flight
you-
is delayed.
Oh, it is?
You had a long day.
They're coming in at 9:45.